Okay. Uh, Says I'm recording with my mic, so the mic's working at least. So I'll take off my glasses here. See a little better. Okay. So now I'm the first rule for recording. Hold the video camera in a vertical direction instead of horizontal. Okay. So Hume ends up being a skeptic about perception, about the external world of matter, about cause and effect, and also about the mind. So he says, when I think about myself, I never catch myself without a perception, and I never notice anything but the perception. So therefore, my mind is just a bundle of perceptions. It's this collection of uh, conscious states, you might say, which I suppose implies, that there's something which is conscious. But maybe um, think about like little like particles of perception, right? So imagine a feeling of hot, a feeling of cold, and they're all sort of bundled together in this one bundle. And what's the bundling about? Well, the bundling is that uh, I don't know what you're thinking about, and you don't know what I'm thinking about. I don't know what you're feeling, you don't know what I'm feeling directly. And that's what the bundling is about, is this sort of strange thing that I don't know what's going on in your mind. Now, a mind is not a substantial thing which exists, which persists through time. It's just a conventional name for a collection of things, a collection of mental states. Um, uh, there's a philosopher named Jonathan Bennett who said Berkeley reifies perception, or he reifies ideas. So it's almost like Plato, who's a rationalist, but remember Plato had this idea of ideas of sort of being the ultimate reality, and material objects are kind of reflections or shadows of this ultimate reality of ideas called the forms, which could be translated into Greek as just the concepts or the ideas. So some of the things going on with Hume is he takes ideas, and instead of saying ideas are just sort of representations of an external world of matter, he treats them as real things. So, so Hume thinks about your ideas as a collection of marbles that can come and go, and your mind is sort of the circle that the marbles is in. And Hume says we don't really have any idea of the container of ideas. We have this sort of vague notion of it, but there's there's no concrete particular impression of the mind. All you have is the perceptions, and we know the perceptions are related in a certain way, and we refer to those bundles of perceptions as minds. But there's no substance in which the perceptions exist. So, so that's Hume's view on the mind. So there's no identity at a single time, and there's no identity through time. And again, it's similar to an army or the concept of a company or a college, right? You have members come and go, but the institution and the institution is just a conventional name for the people and buildings and things that comprise it. So the army is probably the easiest thing, right? So an army has no independent existence from the soldiers, and a class has no independent existence from the students and the teacher. So that's so collections don't exist in the ultimate sense. Only the particular members, or you might say sets, don't exist. Just the members of the set. And so think about your mind as sort of being like a set. So your mind doesn't have existence above and beyond the perceptions that you're having. So that again, it's kind of weird. There's no personal identity. There's no soul. There's no self. It's just this collection of ideas or perceptions, is the term Hume likes to use. Okay, so now Hume recognizes this is sort of counterintuitive. So he'll say, and he says, at the end of the section I gave you, which is near the end of his book, he says, it's on page 144. Um, Custom, then, is a great guide to human life. It is that principle alone which renders our experience useful to us and makes us expect for the future a similar train of events with those which have appeared in the past. Without the influence of custom, we should be entirely ignorant of every matter of fact beyond what is immediately present to the memory and senses. We should never know how to adjust means to ends or employ our natural powers in the production of any effect, right? So, one of Hume's examples, you wouldn't know fire burned, he gives the example of Adam, the first man, right? So he says, Adam's not going to have an innate idea that fire burns human flesh. He's going to have to experience it for himself. And but nature causes you to draw your hand away from the fire, and it also allows you to see that if you notice the closer your hand moves to the fire, the warmer it gets, and then if you get it too close, it feels kind of uncomfortable, and maybe you pull it back and you notice it doesn't feel as uncomfortable. And that's nature, a custom that causes you to notice the connections between events and avoid pain and obtain pleasure. So you adjust means to end. So you do things like if you get too warm, you get away from the fire. And assuming you don't want pain, you change what you're doing. So Hume says that without custom, again, this is sort of habit, psychological conditioning, the way nature makes us do certain things. Without custom, there would be an end at once of all action, as well as the chief part of speculation, right? So you wonder, well, what would happen if I would do this? And you think back through all your experiences of what's happened in the past, and then you expect a similar result. And then finally, Hume says, let's see. What then is the conclusion of the whole matter? A simple one, though it must be confessed pretty remote from the common theories of philosophy. So Hume recognizes he's an outlier. All belief of matter of fact or real existence is derived merely from some object present to the memory or senses, and a customary conjunction between that and some other object. Or, in other words, having found in many instances that two kinds of objects, flame and heat, snow and cold, have always been conjoined together, if flame or snow be presented anew to the senses, the mind is carried over by custom to expect heat or cold, and to believe that such a quality does exist and will discover itself upon nearer approach, right? So you see snow is falling, you go outside, you don't expect it to burn your hand. You expect it to be cold. If you see a fire, you don't expect it to make you cold, you expect it to make you warm. And again, this is nature conditioning you to expect certain things, to believe certain things. And so Hume says, this belief is the necessary result of placing the mind in such circumstances. All these operations are a species of natural instincts, which no reasoning or process of thought and understanding is able to produce or prevent. So there's another place where Hume talks about leaving his study, and he says, when I leave my study, nature takes over. I stop being philosophical, and I walk down the street, and I see a runaway coach, and I jump out of the way, right? Or I hear thunder and see lightning, and I pull out my umbrella. And it's these expectations, Hume says I'm not immune to these any more than anyone else is. It's just that I recognize that these don't come from reason, they come from nature. They come from the way our mind works and the way nature has created us. Now, you look at criticisms like, what does Hume mean by nature? And it's really hard to tell because he doesn't believe, he says you can't believe in the physical world, so he's not talking about the evolution, it seems. And you might say, well, we have this human nature that's sort of in our genes or inherited, but again, that doesn't fit in with Hume's view. So one way to make sense of Hume, which I talked about before, was this idea that he's a skeptical realist, that on the one hand, he sort of has this idea there's a material world and that there's nature and instinct that makes us believe certain things. But also, he says, when it comes down to what you can prove, it's not a whole hell of a lot. You can't prove there's an external world. When you try to even say what the external world means, you end up in contradictions and sort of waving your hands in the air and say, well, it's got substance, it's real. And to give an account of what that means is very difficult. So, and Hume says again, as an empiricist, you have to ask yourself, from what impression is the supposed idea derived? And if you can't find a sense impression that the idea is copied from, then you got to get rid of it. It's a sophistry and illusion. So Hume will make this distinction, I think, between what might be the case and what you can prove. And of course, you should only stick with what you can prove. And so Hume's a skeptic, and he says all we can say is that there are perceptions, and they seem to be related certain ways, and that's pretty much it. And we might, although when he talks about nature and custom, it kind of sounds like cause and effect, right? When you say, he says, for example, he says, all these operations are a species of natural instincts with no reasoning process of the thought, and understanding is able to either produce or prevent.